Okay, so I've seen a few questions asking what is ADHD, what are the different types, which ones women more likely to have, and all that type of stuff. So here's my basic overview as a non-medical professional. By the way, I have a list because I keep forgetting, I've recorded this 5 times now. So you have like your inattentive, which is the one for females and more predominantly, but not necessarily have to be. And that's like your poor memory, you're easily distracted, you're really forgetful, poor organisation. And that's kind of, for me, that shows up as I don't really have any interests in things. I've got a memory like a sieve, always losing my phone, never remembering like events. I can't even remember a family's birthday, like I have to have it in calendars, stuff like that. And then you've got your hyperactive, which is your fidgeting, your constant talking, restlessness, like quite disruptive, but that's the side that has the lack of self-control as well. So that's the impulsive side where the shopping comes in and you have to do something, like the impulsive tattoos and stuff like that. So and there's the combined, which is both of those together. So I have combined ADHD, so I have strong traits mainly of inattentive, but there's a lot of hyperactive in me as well. But for women are mainly inattentive, but the inattentive side is the one that's commonly diagnosed as like anxiety, depression, because that's the one where you just kind of look out of it, you don't really have any interests, you don't want to clean, you don't want to do this, and that's why people are like, oh, you're just depressed. But that's why it's commonly underdiagnosed, because you're not disruptive, you're not bouncing around walls, you're not that little kid who was annoying in class, you are zoning out in your own thoughts, you're daydreaming, you're kind of just floating along kind of in life, not really knowing what's going on, but you're there because you don't want to make a scene because you're a quiet female, so you're just going to carry on. So I have both. Very strong, always pick my nails, really impulsive, got tattoos. I just kind of planned them and then the next day I went and got them. Piercings, done my own piercings, dyed my own hair, cut my hair the other day, you know, stuff like that. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about my diagnosis journey because a few people have asked about that. I obviously learned I had ADHD through TikTok. This was in the first lockdown, it was in the pandemic, I'd lost my routine, I'd lost myself and I couldn't cope. So TikTok kept pushing me ADHD content, and the more I watched, the more I obviously related. So on the back of watching all the TikTok content, I made a list of everything that I related to, and I started to add more and more to that list as like the days went on and the weeks went on that I think were traits of ADHD that I showed in my everyday life. I then waited until obviously the first lockdown had ended, and I actually had a dyslexia assessment in work. At the end of my dyslexia assessment, the woman in work basically said I show very strong traits of having ADHD and I should probably look at getting that assessed. So I explained to her I already wanted to, and I'm going through the process, and I'm going to go ring my GP and basically discuss it with him. I rang the doctors, made an appointment, and I took along this list that I'd made of my traits that I think I show as a female with ADHD. The doctor didn't really say much about it. He kind of was aware that more females were getting diagnosed, but he himself couldn't comment on the fact whether I did or didn't have ADHD because he was not trained in it. So basically at the end of my appointment, I signed a right to choose form and I went with Psychiatry UK, and at the end of that appointment, he sent off my form. I know some people have really struggled to get that initial stage and their doctors to believe them, so I would highly recommend taking a list of things that you think you do that are traits of ADHD that impact your daily life, and potentially, if you can, anything from your childhood. If you can't remember your childhood and you don't have many memories from it and you don't remember what you were like as a child, then speak to your parents or your friends and see if they can think of anything that might have been traits of ADHD showing in you as a child. I would definitely do research, but if your doctor says no, they're not going to refer you, swap doctors because they are shit. End of. If you think you've got undiagnosed ADHD, then watch on because this video is for you. If life's getting really overwhelming, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel and you just don't know how to carry on, I just wanted to come and let you know to keep going because life does get better. I was scrolling through my messages today and I found something that I'd written to someone when I was at the peak of my undiagnosed and mentally fragile state, which is here if you want to pause it and read it. The person I was a year ago was a very emotional, very fragile and very broken person who had no idea why she felt so different in life. I constantly was crying because I didn't feel like I belonged, I couldn't see my life getting any better, and I was contemplating what is the point in carrying on. If we fast forward to me now, which is a year from when I sent that message, my life has completely changed. I'm emotionally stable, I'm happy, and I love my life. You don't need a medical diagnosis to start working on you. You can start working on self-love, self-acceptance, figuring out who you are, because that's something medication doesn't do. I just wanted to say that if you're seeing my content, your For You page must be dedicated to ADHD and you are being pushed ADHD content, which means you've either searched you have ADHD, you don't know if you've got ADHD and you're really confused. That was me 2 years ago. TikTok basically pushed ADHD content to me. I then learned I actually had ADHD, got diagnosed 2 years later and now medicated. So I have made an account to try and help you all figure out what the fuck's going on. So follow me.